Calorie deficit.
All right, so thank you guys for coming out tonight. We know everybody's super busy, so we appreciate your time. Katie has her master's degree from Tufts in Boston in nutrition, so this is kind of her wheelhouse. So, go ahead. What do you go?
So yeah, obviously, current trending diets, if you see it, on TV, I'm sure we all know people that do keto, maybe somebody here does, we'll get into that. But just we've been getting a lot of questions about these two diets in particular, so we figured we would kind of do a little bit of an info session. Although I have my degree in nutrition, we obviously don't cover necessarily, all of what's included in these two diets. So we did a ton of research, and it was actually super beneficial for us because we learned a lot also. So before we get started, I just want to have an idea of like diets that we've tried in this room, because obviously we all walk in here with different glasses on when it comes to diet, nutrition, and food preferences. So if you're comfortable, if you're not comfortable with it, don't worry. But do you guys want to shout out some diets that you've tried in the past? Anything specific?
Well, keto, Atkins,
Okay.
that's 100 years ago. Eat more frequently, smaller meals, eat bigger meals, don't eat after 8 o'clock.
So everything.
What?
So you tried everything.
Yeah, I mean, from forever.
Well, years and years ago, Weight Watchers, just kind of, I think there was some kind of like hot dog diet. But basically
Like the
any
military
kind of-
diet?
Yeah, hot dog diet. But just
Yeah.
Is that Nathan's inspired?
I've done like macros and like flexible dieting, and cause I
So
can
macros is like counting your macros is another like new-ish kind of diet.
I do dirty keto and daily intermittent fasting.
So you do both currently?
I've never done an actual diet other than going to the Joslin Diabetes Center with a relative who was a diabetic and picked up on techniques and the different kinds of foods and how to eat. And I just honestly have stuck to it. I mean, other than that, I'm really a pescatarian. I don't eat any meats. And I just realized that certain things, if I eliminate it, I lose weight.
Great. What do we hope to get out of tonight?
I just wanted to hear some new things that you might have to say.
Okay.
Yeah, same thing. I've read that book on intermittent fasting by the nephrologist,
Mm-hmm.
and the science makes sense.
Yeah,
I just wanted to hear what you guys had to say about it.
totally.
Yeah, same.
Same. How long have you been doing keto?
Since April.
Okay.
I'm kind of curious on what you guys discovered because my mother's been doing it for the past 6 months, and she's having like the most she feels amazing, and the doctor's like, oh, this is not good because you don't need me anymore. So I'm curious to see what.
Yeah, I've never personally done either of these diets, and I have a couple clients. They don't do this, but if I ever got clients that did, I would want to know like more about it.
Totally.
So that's kind of what I want to get out of it.
So yeah, I think there's a ton of information on the internet, and it's kind of, the key is just filtering through it all and getting the important pieces out of it. I've done bodybuilding and powerlifting. Both have definitely different styles of eating. When I was doing bodybuilding, part of that dieting cycle was keto, so I have a little bit experience with that. But most of my dieting life was that like 6 small meals every 3 hours. But more lately, it's been a little bit more of the fasting. So I kind of have a little bit of experience with both of those. So before we really dive into it, just a couple like basic introductory things on diet based on scientific research and just kind of anecdotal research that we've had working with clients with their diets. It seems like calorie deficit is the most important thing when it comes to losing weight. So regardless of what diet you choose, and even like your macronutrients, whether you're eating fats, proteins, carbs, the biggest indicator of success is your calorie deficit. So that's basically the amount of calories consumed relative to the amount of calories it takes to maintain your body weight. All right, so you can do that in two ways. You could exercise more, eat the same amount, exercise more, right? So that you're burning more calories than you're taking in, right? Or if you didn't change your exercise, you could eat less, and then you're consuming less calories than what you're burning, or you can do a combination of both. So regardless of the diet, if you're calorie deficit, it could work for you. Basically tonight we're not gonna tell you you should do keto or you should do intermittent fasting, but you know, they could both potentially work. So calorie deficit, any questions on that? Do we all familiar with that, how that works? Input, output, basically. Current trend of the US is that a lot of people are successful at losing weight, but when it comes to maintaining our weight loss, we're really bad at it. So there's some statistics that say up to 95% of people will gain their weight back. So that kind of stinks, right? So why is it that we can initially gain weight, but we're not able to keep it off? It could be that we're choosing diets that are not lifestyles, and they're just kind of that quick fix. So that's like the juice cleanses and things like that, where it's pretty easy to lose weight if you're not eating food, right? You're just drinking juice or eating hot dogs. But how long are you gonna be able to sustain that? So keto and intermittent fasting are definitely not diets, they're lifestyles. So if you can understand that you can live that lifestyle, I think you would see that it works for you and it works for a lot of people, but you have to be willing to adapt the entire lifestyle and not just say, oh, I'm on a diet. There's obviously no one size fits all approach to nutrition. I think we get caught up with, oh, like keto or intermittent fasting worked really well for my friends, so I'm gonna try it. They're getting a ton of success, but you try it and you're not so successful. So that's the thing with trends, is that we see it work for some people and we assume that it's gonna work for everyone, but that's not the case. There's biological factors that influence diet, and there's those emotional factors that influence diet. All the previous diet history that we have kind of comes to play very often. Certain food preferences, like if you're likely to overeat peanut butter, then maybe you should not have peanut butter in your diet. So things like that. Personal preferences come into play. Prior relationship with food, you want to take that into account when choosing a diet. One really well-renowned nutrition coach that we listen to, his podcast, Lane Norton, who's coached a million people on nutrition. One quote I took from him was, some people just tend to do better on different diets than others. So not a super scientific answer, but it's just valid. Like, some people just tend to do better on these diets than other people. And part of that is kind of knowing your tendencies, your lifestyle, and getting to know your body. So that's kind of our introduction. Anything?
No, just to that point, one thing that I talk with a lot of clients about is, when you're looking at a diet, you should ask yourself, can I do this long term? If the answer is not yes, then you shouldn't even start it. Because if you're gonna start something that you can't do long term, it's oftentimes not only gonna put you back to where you started, but usually in a worse place. So if you can't say yes to that question, then you should think twice about even starting that diet. So.
All right, so getting into keto specifically, you might have some information to add since you've been pretty active with the keto for a couple months, but it is widely defined by your macronutrients. So you have your fat, your protein, and your carbs as your three macros. In order to be ketogenic, you're typically eating only 20 grams to 50 grams of carbs per day. So do you know how many grams of carbs?
No, I don't count
Okay.
at all.
All right.
So I do it pretty dirty, but I just generally stick to meat and veggies
Okay.
and high fat stuff, so I don't go low cal on anything.
Do you test your
Nope,
ketones?
haven't done that either.
Okay. All right, so just to give you an idea.
So I
this
might
is-
not even be in ketosis for all I know, I just kind of follow the
A
lifestyle.
keto-like diet.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is what 20 grams of carbs look like, just so you have an idea. So if you're full-blown keto, you're eating about 20 to 50 grams of carbs per day, so that would be your carb limit.
That's 20 or 50?
That's 20.
Okay.
So what factors into that is obviously your body size. If you're a little bit bigger, you can probably handle a little bit more carbs. If you're more active, you can handle a little bit more carbs. But it's also one of the only diets where it's what's the word? Blood biomarker indicative. So full-blown keto people will test their ketones in their blood. You can do urine, you can do a blood sample, and they have to be above a certain threshold for you to be technically on like a keto diet, ketogenic diet. So that state is called being in ketosis. So we randomly can go in and out of keto normally. So like, say you have a weird week where you happen to eat a certain way, your body could go into keto. Babies can be in keto. Certain people that live in like Arctic areas where they're only eating animal fat and they don't have access to grains they naturally live in like this keto diet lifestyle. So it's not anything it's not unnatural. Like our bodies can go there regularly, but it does take some work to make sure that you're only eating 20 to 50 grams of carbs per day. So if you're not eating carbs, what are you eating? Right, so that means we need to increase something else, right? Because we have our 3 macros. If we're staying at 2,000 calories and we lower the carbs, then the fat and the protein have to go up, right, to maintain that calorie balance. So what goes up a lot is your fat intake. So if you're not eating carbs, you're eating a ton of fat, which really goes against a lot of what some of the older people grew up with. Fat's bad for you, low-fat diets, everything in the store being labeled low-fat. So I think it kind of like turned a lot of dieting, trends around. But so that little wheel there shows you what a good macro breakdown would look like if you were doing a keto diet. So your body has to be in that ketosis state. Typically you would test to make sure that you're there. When you're in ketosis, that's when you're gonna get the most benefits from the diet. When you do go keto, there's something called the adaptation period. So it's not necessarily defined how long that lasts. Could be a week, could be up to 3 weeks. It depends on how heavy of a carb eater you are before you start. All right, so people call it like the keto flu, where it's like you basically feel like you have the flu. So you don't feel good, you're sluggish, you're achy.
It's like a detox even when you when you go off sugar, like
Right.
how you would feel with that.
Right. So a lot of people will feel like crap and they'll stop before like the full benefit of the diet actually kicks in, because they're like, oh, something's wrong, this doesn't feel right, I have no energy. But once you get over that hump, what your body does is it stops using carbs for energy and starts using your fat. So we all have fat storages on our body. Most of us want to get rid of it. The reason that this diet works for weight loss and leaning out is that your body does start breaking down that fat more effectively rather than using your carbs, the carbohydrates that you're eating. So basically we're just switching your fuel sources around. Personally, when I was bodybuilding and I'd be eating, meals every 3 hours, if I didn't have a meal, I would be a nightmare. Like I would crash, I'd be angry. I would feel that like blood sugar crash. That's because my body was running on carbohydrates. When you're not running on carbs and you have that fat storage always on you, you don't have that crash. So you can go longer in between meals. It's a different feeling. You don't have that as much of an insulin sensitivity as you would if you were eating, the carbs very often. So the adaptation period is important, especially like with your clients or something. If they are gonna go keto, expect that they're not gonna feel good or you're not gonna feel good. Could be as long as a couple weeks. So what changes in your body is that the energy source is no longer carbohydrates, but it's fat for fuel. So your brain can use fat, your muscles can use fat, it's not dangerous, but it does take some time for that switch to happen. So some research suggests that there's not, in fact, any metabolic advantage of a low-fat diet. The weight loss results are simply from reduction in calorie intake. So another thing about keto, which is kind of cool, is that it does something to your appetite as well. So if you're eating high satiating foods like fats, you tend to feel not as hungry. So that could be a reason why it also leads to weight loss. You're just not as hungry as often. And then the thermogenetic effect of eating a little bit more protein. So protein is more metabolically expensive on your body. So you burn more calories breaking that protein down than you would if it was a carb, for example. So that's another thing that happens in your body that kind of like upregulates your metabolism. So not only are you eating less, but your metabolism might be upregulated a little bit, which would lead to obviously good results. Anything to add there? Any questions on any of that? All right, so the research, is it safe, right? Because I think first glance, only eating 20 grams of carbs a day kind of sounds like it could be dangerous. The USDA recommends, if you remember your food pyramid, that whole bottom bar was carbs, right? So they tell you to eat up to 200 grams of carbs per day. So 50%, so that pie wheel in the front, if you're eating what like the US government recommends, 50% of that wheel is gonna be carbs.
That's why everyone's fat.
If I ate that many carbs, I probably would not get out of bed and I'd need to take naps after every meal. So, you know, when I coach people on nutrition, I don't necessarily say they need to go keto, but the first thing I look at is typically their carb intake. And if it is super high, we kind of try to drop it a little bit and bring the fat and the protein up. So it's not keto, but you know, it's that lifestyle of eating a little bit less carbs. So no negative effect on any of the studies that I read, and a lot of them are meta-analyses that look at 20 studies and they put it into one, so you can, it's an easy read. Some people are nervous about like effects of liver. So if we are eating a little bit more protein, how does that affect your liver? If you don't have any pre-existing liver filtering issues, there's no evidence that it does any damage there either. That's one concern that I've heard often. Other benefits include diabetes reversal. So if you're eating less carbs, obviously your insulin, you're being a little bit nicer to your insulin. It's not working as hard. So it has helped people get off their diabetes medication for that. That's type 2, obviously not type 1. What about exercise performance? So say you are an athlete, or you want to do Spartan races, or you're a runner, and you don't want your performance to decrease because you're not eating carbs, because we are trained, right? Do you carb load before your races?
A little bit, not like you would expect.
Right, but that is something like that you would hear runners say, or soccer players or whatever, that carb loading. They've done a bunch of studies looking at athletic performance, and as long as you're through that adaptation period, it does not affect your performance. So if you just started keto, probably not gonna do as well in the gym or during your race, but if you've gone, you know, if you've been doing it for some time, it does not affect your athletic performance. When it comes to weight loss, we talked about how reduction in appetite increases fat breakdown, right? Because we're using that for fuel. All right, so some concerns. What would you guys have, like say I said, all right, your homework is to go home and all become keto. What would be some concerns that you would have?
My concern would be the amount of fat, because I would be nervous about having too much.
Probably because you're programmed to
Yeah,
be
yeah,
low
for
fat.
sure.
Yeah.
And then you know, it's really a whole new thing totally new, like swapping everything around that you learned.
Yeah, you would just have to, so you're not, like, your calorie intake, you would try to keep that just the same or at a healthy level, right? So it's not like you're cutting out carbs and then you're eating the same amount just without the carbs, right? Your calorie intake is the same. You're just replacing the carbs with the fat. So that's definitely something that you just have to, like, in your head.
I just slowly did it, like I would eat, avocado and bacon and whole fat, whatever, and just kind of, I don't know, I just listened to my body, and when I got full, I stopped eating. Like, the fat, you'd be amazed, eating a little bit of fat, like with the grass-fed butter, fills you up, like.
Well, I have that, but I think too, it's, you start to eat the fat and then you still eat the carbs.
Right.
And that's a problem, that would be what
so-
I would be doing right now,
That's-
doing all of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if
Right.
you're not committed 100%, right, and you're eating super high fat, and then Friday, Saturday
Yeah.
comes, and you're like, all right, I'm gonna go out, I'm gonna have some drinks, I'm gonna have nachos, then you're doing yourself a huge disservice, because you are intaking that high fat, but you're not cutting down.
So are
your
you
carbs.
saying then with this diet, it's really it's a commitment, because you can't be wavering all around, because then
It's,
you're.
yeah, it's a
It's
lifestyle.
less forgiving
Yes.
than a lot of other
Correct.
diets. So
Okay.
if you are the type of person that is not gonna do well with that, and you're gonna beat yourself up over it, and you can't really handle that, then it may not be the best one for you. But if you can dial it in and that's not gonna affect you, then I think it's a good fit.
Yeah, like say if someone came in here and they were like, oh, if they labeled themselves like a carbaholic,
Yeah,
They would
that was
not
gonna
be
be tough.
they would not be someone
don't
that
care
we would
about
say, oh,
carbs.
here, try keto, right? Because
I
it's,
think
they're,
it's more if someone's, like you're addicted to anything, if you're addicted to carbs and your body is craving it, you may be able to do it for a short time, but your body's gonna kick back. Eventually, your body doesn't wanna do it. If you can't maintain a level of fat, sometimes there are good fats, there are bad fats, but if you can't maintain that level of fat intake, your body eventually is just gonna push back.
Yeah,
and then it's
and-
gonna swing back the other way,
And
and
to
you're
that,
gonna overeat those carbs.
to your point too, one statement that I always think applies to every diet also is self-discipline. If you don't have the self-discipline, no diet is gonna circumvent that. So that is gonna be the number one thing that you have to figure out, what you will be the most disciplined with when you choose a diet.
Well, it's no different that if I go out with you and you wanna have a steak and I'm not gonna eat it, if I sit and watch you and that steak looks good, you have to be disciplined about it.
Exactly.
I mean, most people will cave.
Exactly. So I guess what I'm saying is there's no shortcut to that, right? If you have the self-discipline, you'll be good. If you don't, it's gonna be a struggle.
Yeah, and I think also the other problem with ketosis, which is sometimes you feel that it may not be the healthier choice. In other words,
Yeah, you're
like there's the cheeses and the,
bacon and,
right, and the processed ham, or, that kind of stuff that's a little easier to produce. So for some of my people, that's the issue. They won't have the quinoa, or they won't have the amaranth, or they won't have that, because they're worried about their levels being high. But they'll eat, salami, or they'll have pepperoni, or they'll have, smooth it out. So how do you balance it with them? How do you say to them?
Right, because you
Yeah.
still have to make, with
Right.
both these diets, you still have to make healthy food choices, right?
Exactly.
It's not,
Well, isn't that kind of like when you meet a vegetarian or a vegan? I mean, they're just, a lot of them are just
An
sugar
Oreo
addicts. I mean, they're just sugar, they just eat sugar, and because
yeah,
then they
I
don't eat
mean,
meat,
you
so
could be
it's the
healthy
same
vegan
kind
or
of.
you could be,
Right, so you could be a healthy,
Well, you
You know.
exchange one, it's like you exchange one addiction for another. So that's part
everyone's
of
an
the issue.
addict, it's so weird.
so yeah, I mean, you have to take into account your lifestyle.
Right.
Does it work for a lot of people? Yeah. Is it scientifically healthy? Yeah. But is it something that's executable for everyone? Definitely not, right? I have a gluten allergy. So I feel like keto would not be that hard because I'm already used to not eating
Yeah.
bagels and pizza and things like that. So for me, I'm considering it. I think I would try it, but it would definitely fit for already the way I eat. But like we said, if someone's a carb person, probably not gonna be your, you know, your type of diet. Anything to add on that? Anything like that we didn't mention that you think is